Wrong Turn, 2003, the original, the cult classic, the movie that started it all. Well, what can you say about this movie? It's actually pretty good.
I just found this tied to a tree back there. Somebody did this.
So Wrong Turn came out in 2003, and horror as a genre had hit the wall. Like it bottomed out pretty hard in the early 90s, and it had this little spike, just little teeny tiny little spike in the late 90s after the success of Scream, and then the Columbine thing happened, and it was just done. MPAA cracked down hardcore. All the morality police started screaming, "These movies are poisoning our youth. It's making people violent." And it just stopped. Cold. Done. Aside from like Scream 3, basically there was almost no major studio horror for the next couple of years. Hannibal's an exception. But of course, with Hannibal, they made a thriller where a guy's brains are eaten right out of his skull. Sure, that's a thriller. But 2003, the floodgates opened, and there was a reason for this. See, the MPAA had been cracking down so hard on movies you could barely show a drop of blood in a horror flick. But then there was the wave of cop shows, the CSI, the Criminal Minds, and all that. And those shows were so ridiculously graphic that it was kind of hard to say you can't do in an R-rated movie what is being described in graphic detail on network television. I mean, sure, they weren't technically showing it all, but when you see a woman tied to a post, gagged, like with a knife right behind her, and then it edges down like it's about to go between her legs, you can guess what happened. And I mean, that was the kind of stuff that was going on these cop shows. It's actually kind of shocking to go back and watch this stuff that was on TV in the 2000s. I caught some reruns of Two and a Half Men the other day, and it's like, wow, this humor wouldn't fly in a hard R comedy today, but network TV back then. So I'm like, Wrong Turn and House of a Thousand Corpses were kind of the floodgates being open. And they opened pretty close, within a month of each other. House of a Thousand Corpses is a way better movie, but it's also a way weirder movie, so it's not going to be for everyone. Wrong Turn is it's a popcorn movie. It's a very straightforward, it's what people call a roller coaster movie. I don't quite call it a turn off your brain flick, because there's nothing ridiculously stupid in here. I mean, there's nothing that's like, well, that's impossible. Like, for the most part, it's like, yeah, that could happen. It's just these three inbred hillbilly cannibals living in their surprisingly big shack. I'd forgotten how big their house is. But they just live out there and they kill and eat basically anyone that goes down this one little strip of road. Now, I mean, again, this movie's script, I just described the plot of this movie. It is a very simple, basic script. It's been done going back to the Spider Baby, which I've always, I think, is the original Cannibals in the Woods Eating People movie. The Jack Hill movie, which also had Sid Haig from House of a Thousand Corpses. But the cool thing about Wrong Turn is it's the chance to see a polished studio version of that story. You're seeing it with good production values, good actors. It's a big release. It was cool, and like the horror community was very excited. That when I was a kid, I used to spend a lot of time on horror message boards, and people were so pumped about this movie. It's like, the scripted lead, the script by his name's Alec McPherson, but Alan McPherson. But the script had leaked, and people were like, "Big studios don't make movies like this. This is going to be incredible." And it was so much fun because I got to see this in theaters, and it was the audience was yelling and screaming. It was a great thing. Like people had a lot of fun with this movie. Of course, the critics hated it, but it's not for this is not a movie for the critics. This is a movie where a guy who's on his way for a job interview gets into a car wreck, and the car wreck is really well filmed, by the way. And then he and the other people from the other car wander through the woods and get picked off one by cannibals. That's it. And it's just that's it. It's just that basic, but it's cool. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's fast paced. This is very much a movie that if you just want to sit down and relax and not have to put too much effort into it, it just happens right in front of you. It's fast. It's cool. So this was directed by Rob Schmidt and written by Alan McPherson. Alan McPherson. I think I get his name right. But The writer has a weird career. Yeah, he actually wrote the original Left Behind movie, and he wrote another couple of Christian movies. Left Behind, which was a big Christian hit, kind of like I don't know, God's Not Dead or that kind of thing. But he wrote a few Christian movies, and he also wrote Ballistic X versus Sever, which is one of the most hated action movies of the 2000s with Antonio Banderas and Lucy Liu as dueling spies. I saw it a million years ago. I don't remember anything about it. I don't remember being all that bad. I mean, I remember being bad. I don't remember being exceptionally bad. And he also wrote the Tekken movie based on the popular video game. It's a fighting game. And while I have never seen Tekken the movie, I have heard that it's one of the most god awful pieces of trash ever. So, but he's done a lot of TV work, and the director Rob Schmidt, he did a movie right before this called Crime and Punishment in Suburbia, which is a dysfunctional family movie, and it's actually pretty good. It stars Monica Keena from Freddy vs. Jason, Michael Ironside, the great Michael Ironside, Starship Troopers, Total Recall, Scanners. Yeah, that was a pretty solid movie. And after this, he did another movie with Eliza Dushku called The Alphabet Killer, which was okay. Eliza Dushku's performance was really good in it, but it was just kind of a basic serial killer movie with the added gimmick that she's struggling with adult onset schizophrenia. If you're a fan of the actress, it's worth watching. It's got a kind of an interesting cast, but it's just a pretty forgettable movie. But and it's weird because Eliza Dushku was pushed so hard in this movie's marketing. I mean, she's the one on the DVD cover, even though she's technically not the lead. But she's the most famous person in the movie. Eliza Dushku was coming off of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was very popular, and a spin-off Angel, and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and Bring It On, the cheerleader movie with Kirsten Dunst. So she had a lot of stuff to her name at this point. So she was the name, even though Desmond Harrington is the lead of the movie. Now, Desmond Harrington is best known for playing Quinn, the angry cop that hated Dexter on the TV show Dexter in the starting in season 3. And he was really good on that show, and he's worked consistently since then on TV shows. But leading up to Ron Turner, he had been in a few movies. He had been in a couple of really good horror movies. The Hole with Thora Birch and Keira Knightley, very good claustrophobic psychological horror movie. And Ghost Ship, which wasn't all that good, but it was a big release, and the first 5 minutes are really good. And he's a main character in it. And even the year that Wrong Turn came out, he was in a movie with Udo Kier called Love Object. And Love Object is a fantastic movie, and anyone who hasn't seen that movie should go out and watch it right now. I always tell people it's like a horror version of Lars and the Real Girl with Ryan Gosling. About a guy who develops an unhealthy fixation on his giant, those creepy, giant, expensive sex dolls that are supposed to look like real people. It's a fantastic movie. So Desmond Harrington stars in this as Peter Horton's character from Children of the Corn, basically. Like, I've got the job interview of my life. I've got to get there, blah, blah, blah. And there's this, car, traffic jam. And he can't get through it, and he's not going to make it on time. And he goes and asks this guy for advice, and the guy's like, okay, well, here's what you do. You get back in your car. You comb your hair about 50,000 more times. It was a funny little bit where the guy's just fucking with him. So Desmond Harrington gets back in his car. He goes to the most run-down, rag-ass gas station in movie history. This place, squatters would not want to go into this place, and it's apparently still at least quasi-functional, I guess. And it's also funny that the sign is spelled wrong twice. It's actually spelled wrong both on the road and on the building itself, which I guess means this guy legit doesn't know how to spell. But the guy who runs the place looks just he's just chugging Pepto-Bismol for some reason. He's got about 2 teeth in his head. Barely even can seem to close his mouth. Like he's the most redneck white trash jag out. Like just I need to smell this guy. So finds it wrong. He does have a map posted outside his little gas station, though, and Desmond Harrington sees it, and he's like, oh, there's this dotted dirt road that goes around the traffic jam, so I can just use that, right? And he's like, you do what you want. You don't gonna be shy. Like, this guy is the most... Yeah, this character exists in most of these movies as the creepy gas station attendant, or creepy shop owner, or, going all the way back to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The guy who kind of mildly... The guy who tells them where to go, but then tells them they shouldn't go there, like, oh, well, you could go this way, but I wouldn't if I was you. And then sometimes the guy ends up being in league with the killers and sometimes not. But this is a very typical character. This is a very cliched script. Like I said, the script is very basic. But, it's fun. It has really good and inventive kills in it, too. You got to give it credit for that. And the characters are well written and likable, which is nice as well. A lot of these movies, the characters are just kind of blah. So, Desmond Harrington is this kind of yuppie pre-med guy. He's driving, and he's driving very poorly. He keeps taking his eyes off the road. You're like, dude, you're driving fast on a road you've never been on. Just pay attention. Like he's digging with his radio. He drops some stuff. He sees a campfire. He's like, and he finally crashes. And the crash is so well filmed, I thought, because I've been in a major car accident, and the thing that people say about it slowing down is not true at all. It feels like you're in fast forward because when you're in a major crash, like in this movie, you see exactly what's going to happen and you know how you could avoid it, but you can't move fast enough to avoid it. Like he looks up, he sees the car, and there's this, I could swerve, I could slam on brakes, but I don't have time to do either. Done. Crash. It was great. And, it was funny how everyone was all mad at him, even though they were in the road. But, And they, of course, they had the blowout because of the barbed wire on the road. And that becomes, barbed wire kind of becomes this franchise's staple. So he meets the victims for the movie, which is the horny couple played by Lindy Booth and Kevin Zegers, who I think were married at the time. They were also a couple in Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake. And Lindy Booth is so cute in this movie, by the way, but I like her. She's popped up in a few things. She was even on that show, The Librarians. But, and then, Eliza Dushku is the girl who's recently been dumped, and her friends are taking her out on this hiking trip to get her mind off of it. And then the recently engaged couple, played by Jeremy Sisto, who's been in a ton of TV stuff. He's been in a few other horror movies. May is probably the most significant thing I could think of with Angela Bettis. He's a good actor, and he's actually kind of the most likable character in this movie. And Emmanuel Croquois, I may not be pronouncing that right. I think it's Hawaiian, but I think she was on that show Entourage for a while. But yeah. So the IMDb says these are supposed to be in their late teens to early 20s. These people, everything about them vibes mid to late 20s though. They look mid to late 20s. They're engaged. So I don't think that's accurate. I think they are supposed to be in their mid to late 20s. IMDb of course can be wrong, just like Wikipedia can be wrong. And so anyway, one thing IMDb has right, though, about this movie, and actually is in the trivia, is that this is the only movie in the Wrong Turn franchise, the original 6 movies, that doesn't have any nudity in it. It's because all the nudity was cut out of the script. We even have that setup for the sex scene where everybody goes for help, and Lindy Booth and Kevin Zegers, the stoner couple, stay behind, where they're like, we're going to have sex. Cut. That sure was some good sex we just had. It's like, I feel like a scene is missing here. So... yeah, and apparently towards the end when Eliza Dushku was all tied up, she was supposed to have been tied up naked. And they also cut necrophilia out of the script. And, yeah, I don't think you're ever going to get that on the big screen. Well, although in the most recent Texas Chainsaw Massacre they did, and that was shocking. But, the one that was called Leatherface, the prequel. So anyway, we get our 3 killers, who are Sawtooth, who is the biggest one with the gun. No, wait, Sawtooth. It's hard to keep Sawtooth and One Eye separate. Basically, one of them has one eye, but they're both just big, muscled up mountain men. Just one of them is missing an eye, and one of them uses a gun, and one of them uses a crossbow. And then Three Finger, and Three Finger's the one everyone likes. Three Finger's the deranged little freak, giggling, who's played by an actor who's been in some other major horror stuff. He was the janitor, the creepy janitor in Urban Legend with Jared Leto, and he was the first guy that was on all the posters for the movie Cube, the first Cube movie. The guy who goes into the room with the thing that kind of cuts him into little blocks of flesh. I don't know how else to put it. But yeah, so we get introduced to our killers, and our main characters just blindly wander into their home after wandering around the trail for a while. And this doesn't look like an especially out of the way trail, really. Like there's railing up around the trail when it gets near a cliff and stuff, so it doesn't seem like this is that out of the way. And these killers, even though they're nonverbal, they don't seem that stupid. They seem like they are at least adept at tracking, trapping. They drive, they have a car. So I don't know, it's not really clear exactly how they devolved, and maybe they're just not capable of speech. Maybe their vocal cords are just so mangled that they can't speak. Because they don't seem stupid. They're not like the troglodytes in Bone Tomahawk or anything. They do have very basic skills, but they have skills. They have the sense to kind of push all the cars off into one place that more people won't see them. And keep in mind, this is before drones or Google Earth, so they wouldn't have needed to cover up the cars or anything. Just put them in a out of the way area and you're set. So we get the lengthy scene of all the characters wandering around in the hillbilly's shack. I keep calling it a shack, even though I think it's huge. And in the meantime, Lindy Booth and Kevin Zegers are no more. And honestly, that's the best kill in the whole movie is when they go to strangle her with the barbed wire and miss instead of catching her around the throat, catch her around the mouth. That's gnarly as hell. And when you see the aftermath later, that's a great effect. Stan Winston did the effect. Well, he supervised the effects on this, but he apparently was very hands-on with it in terms of design. And they're really good. They are. They're awesome. Stan Winston was brilliant. Of course, he worked on Predator and Aliens. He was Pumpkinhead. He even directed Pumpkinhead. He did a lot of really legendary work. And this was apparently the last movie that he was hands-on in that way with. Now, he died, I think, 6 years later, and his company continued, but this was kind of the last time he really was engaged with the movie, supposedly. And he did a great job. He left a good legacy on it. And these characters are, and these kills are iconic. And the use of CGI is something I also have to talk about in this movie because CGI kills are lame. They never their CGI blood looks terrible, but this movie uses CGI the way it should be used. I think that the people who made this, Rob Schmidt and Stan Winston and all, they understood that CGI should be used to enhance a practical effect rather than just lazily replace a practical effect. Because I think most of the kills are CGI enhanced, but they're shot in such a way and they're done in such a way that it doesn't take you out of the movie. You don't suddenly feel like you're watching a video game cutscene. So that's pretty cool. Um, and now it pretty quickly just devolves into a long chase scene. Like this is a chase movie. They get chased out of the shack. They get chased through the woods. They get chased on the car. And I will say they gave up on that car pretty quick. I would have at least tried to push it out of the mud, but whatever. So they get chased out of the car. They go up in the ranger station. Then they get chased near the waterfall. So it's basically just getting chased. They get chased through the treetops. That sequence is pretty cool. Um, yeah, it's a chase movie, but it's a good chase movie. So as far as the characters go, Eliza Dushku's good in it. I mean, she plays most of her roles more or less the same way, but I like the actress. She's very attractive, but she's also got some legit talent to her. City by the Sea with Robert De Niro, where she played James Franco's junkie girlfriend. She was good in that. She was good in The Alphabet Killer, and her show The Dollhouse, which I think only ran for 2 seasons, but I actually kind of liked it. It's free on Tubi right now, and it's something I'd recommend checking out if you're curious about her. But she's good in it as the tough outdoorsy type of girl who is able to handle herself. Jeremy Sisto's this kind of likable, laid back smartass. Emmanuel Croquois is the character that no one liked because she's the whiny, immediately falls apart girl. There's a period of the movie where she's just kind of in such deep shock and hysterical that she's just walking around like, we're all gonna die. So, she's not a very popular character. Uh, Desmond Harrington, I like him in most everything I've seen him in. I'm middling on this because he's just a little. I don't know. He takes. I remember watching this with someone and them saying that yeah, that lead guy, he kind of gave off the vibe. This shit happens to me every weekend. He's just a little too cool and calm and collected for a pre-med student. I mean, if they had said that he had maybe served in the military, then went into pre-med, or if they had said, like Ken Foray in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, where he's a survivalist or something, because he just seems a little too okay with everything. He just is very put together and calm, and we have to do this now type of stuff. So that could at least partly be an issue with the writing, but yeah, his character doesn't really land for me. And yeah, so I mean, heavy spoilers from here on out. I'm just gonna kind of talk about the kills a little bit. But it's a good movie. It's a good. It doesn't feel especially dated either. Does what any movie that was. If this movie was made today, it would still do basically the same thing as our cell phones don't work. Oh well, guess we're walking type thing. So yeah, it's not too dated. It's got some good solid gore. The effects hold up. All around, it's just a fun. I mean, it's a very short movie. It's like 80 minutes, so it's just a fun little watching people get killed type of movie. It's got some good intense moments. It's a pretty solid date movie if you want to do that, go that route, because it's easy to talk over. You're not gonna miss anything. It's like, oh, they're still lost in the woods. So overall, good flick. I enjoyed it, and I'm gonna do a video on the sequels next. So that's Maniac Movies. I do updates Wednesdays and Fridays. Now, heavy spoilers from here on out. And I'm bummed that Jeremy Sisto died as early as he did. So, like I said, he really is the most likable character in the movie, so it kind of sucks that he dies pretty early. I mean, he dies about half an hour in, and he dies, trying to save everybody. He's leading the cannibals away from them. So yeah, it's a bummer, but you know, then and his death scene is it's cool in that at this point that gag hadn't been done to death. I mean, we've had that gag done now a lot where they're running, 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 then they suddenly stop, and you're like, why did they stop? And they turn around and they got like 8 arrows in their back. But at this point, I don't think another movie had done that, or at least it wasn't done as often. So it was actually kind of shocking. Like, wait, did he just twist his ankle? Why the hell did he? Oh, he's dying. Then his annoying girlfriend, fiance, excuse me, gets killed. And that's a cool kill because like the axe goes through her jaw, and then her hit the top half of her head is stuck to the tree on the axe, while the body you just see the body plummet down to the trees. Then they catapult Three Fingers' ass out of the tree. That was pretty funny. And then they capture Eliza Dushku, and they kill the ranger. I don't think he was a cop. I think he was a ranger. And that was kind of a good moment where the cop is just completely unprepared for this. He's like, "What are you talking about, boy? Like, dude, did you not listen to the radio station? They just said people are dead. How about get them in your car and just start driving?" But yeah, cop dead, and Eliza Dushku gets captured, and that part is kind of screwed up because when they capture her, they tie her up and they take her back to their shack, which they didn't do with anyone else. They instant killed everyone else. So, like I said, in the original script, it was set up that they were going to rape her. Now, were they going to do it for procreation or just pleasure? Who knows? But they had stripped her naked when they tied her up, and the studio didn't want to do that. And I'm going to take a blind guess and say the actors didn't want to do that either, but that's what body doubles are for. But yeah, it doesn't make sense because why did they drag her ass all the way back to the shack to tie her up, and then they're just going to kill her? Because you see that they're just going to kill her, so that seems a little bit dumb. But it is cool when she gets hold of the crossbow and shoots, I believe it's Sawtooth in the back of the head. And they explained that because these people are so inbred, they've developed a weird kind of tolerance for pain and extreme strength. I don't know that inbreeding does that, but it's a nice little bit of mythology and a bit of a middle finger to West Virginia. But I don't live in West Virginia, so that's fine, I guess. And the final fight in the shack is pretty cool. It's a little goofy and over the top, and just how impossible to kill these characters are, but it's fine, and you finally get a good look at the makeup effects, because up to that point, you really haven't gotten a good long look at anyone except for Three Finger. But you finally get to see the, like the cleft palate and, the jacked up eye and all that on Sawtooth and One Eye. Then they blow up the shack and leave. So, good, fun, fast-paced little movie, and led into a straight-to-DVD franchise. And then a really good reboot this year. See ya.